everybody. I'm Dr. Christy Taylor, career executive coach and founder of Work Solutions LLC and Work Global News Magazine. And I'm excited today to present to you another feature for our Changemaker series. Today, I'm speaking with Nadja Hagen. She's a self-love coach for high-achieving women recovering from people-pleasing and building a life assigned with their values. And she teaches women to set healthy boundaries, prioritize their needs, and build mutual connected relationships without the need to pretend to be someone they are not. Nadja, I am so excited to interview you today. Is there anything you want to add? Introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll get started.
Hello, Christy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. You introduced me already pretty well. So the only thing I'd like to add is that I'm teaching my signature process, the self-love mastery method, where I teach clarity about personal values and healing emotional wounds and embodying self-love on a practical day-to-day level.
Look, I am so excited because it goes right into my first question, right? And your work as a, hopefully people consider me a high achieving woman, but as your work, I consider myself a high achieving woman. You're a high achieving woman yourself. So your work really focuses on the heart of what you do and the experiences that you've lived. So your focus on helping high achieving women break free from people pleasing, and I would like to just what is your personal story that inspired you to do this? I always say one of the things that I think makes coaching so unique is because people flock to coaches because there's always that personal story, right? That people can share. So tell us your personal story about what got you here.
Yeah, in my late 20s, I got fired from my dream job with the words, "You're not good enough." And that's the Polish version of what they told me. And I noticed that, I lost my dream job. Then I lost my apartment. Then my friends, so-called friends, no longer invited me because they actually weren't any friends. They were a huge business network. So I learned this lesson: friends are friends, business network is a business network. Then my fiance broke up with me and I moved back in with my parents, which was completely embarrassing. And I noticed that I had built a life that looked pretty darn perfect and good on paper, but that wasn't actually aligned with who I am truly at my core. So that was what led me to self-love and building an aligned, authentic life.
Yeah, I always think it's so important to share these stories because when people are looking for coaches or connect, they're looking for that personal connection and looking to know their personal story. They want to know that you've been through what they've been through. And so I find that, so many, I've even experienced that myself, Nadja. So I connect so much, even with the work that I even do as a career coach, just similar stories, right? So when you're talking about people pleasing, I love what you just said there. Actually, I want to spend some time there breaking this down. We focus on writing and building this life on paper, right? One of the things you just pointed out in your story is that you learned about the concept of friends. And sometimes in the process of building this life, we don't distinguish the business colleagues or business network from true friendships. Can you highlight that just a little bit? Because I just think that's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah, I think I start with one trap in which high achieving women quite regularly fall. It's, one characteristic of high achieving women is they are ambitious. They want to do what they do perfectly. So that's what's part of what's making them high achieving, right? So they identify so much with their job that they neglect their private life, their private friendships quite often because they focus on delivering and focus on work environments and networks. So it's not that easy and easily to distinguish between true friends and a business colleague. But I would say if you get stuck with your car in the middle of the night somewhere, who would you call? These are your friends. Who would you not call? Probably rather a business colleague.
Yeah, I like that because I think that sometimes we don't set the proper boundaries when we're building these relationships or trying to build this dynamic or perfect life on paper. Now, again, your focus is on high achieving women, and I just want to talk about just some of the biggest misconceptions in general. Now that we've kind of tracked through your personal story, which I'm sure you'll continue to share more or throughout, but when it comes to high achieving women, what are some of those biggest misconceptions about setting boundaries? And I think you started there with a good example with friendships. And, not only the examples in terms of how to set these boundaries, but what can women do what can to overcome, the inability to set clear boundaries?
Yeah, I love this question. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that declining a request makes them a mean bitch. Sorry for this word, but that it's unkind and labeling them as someone they don't want to be as soon as they say no. And the exact opposite is actually true, because I consider boundaries not at these red flags like, oh, here's somebody who has an attitude, but they are like rules. Imagine we have traffic rules. If the traffic light is red, we all stop. If the traffic light is green, I continue. So we all accept these rules, and that's why we can move safely and efficiently through traffic. It's the same with our personal and professional boundaries. And one of the best things to overcome the hesitation of saying no is make yourself conscious that every time you say yes, it's costing you something. It's costing you resources. And these resources can be your time, your energy, your emotional state, your money. There are so many things that you are investing with a yes, apart from the yes itself, right? So become conscious about what you are protecting when you are saying no. And then make a conscious decision if you want to invest these things or if you prefer to not do this.
Yeah, yeah. I remember in the early days of me doing my podcast, I had a guest on, and one of the things that she said that really stuck with me is that no is a complete sentence. And so many women are just afraid to say no. I mean, is there a secondary thing that you feel like that women, or is that the biggest struggle, just saying no? Is there a secondary piece when it comes to setting those boundaries that may impact the outcomes of setting boundaries?
Oh, yes, they are, especially in a professional environment. So when your boss is giving you another project or some more responsibility, or a client is asking for even more service and deliverance, then there's the fear of mm, a no becoming a career limiting move.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this can be easily overcome when we practice the way in which we say no. So I always recommend put yourself in the shoes of the one who's receiving the no. Because you're absolutely right. No is a complete sentence, and we don't need to explain and justify it, but we can wrap it nicely. So
Mm-hmm.
I can give an example. I have more than 10 years of corporate leadership roles under my belt. So what I learned when my boss came to me and said, oh, I have an exciting new project on top of everything else you're doing. And then if I would say no, that would not make a professional and good impression. And that's okay. But
Mm-hmm.
if I say, that's an exciting project and I would love to do it, but these are the things I already have on
Yes.
my hand, I'm responsible for. So when I take on this additional project, which of the other ones would you like to be delayed? That's a clear no, too. And it's kind, it's transparent, it's building trust, it's building relationships. And if we don't use the no as a ball we are throwing back as a weapon, but as a tool of true connection, then everything starts to shift.
Yeah, I think that we do have to be careful because we say I always say that no is such a powerful no, it's a complete sentence and it's such a powerful term, but it's also in context, right? And the same way that you just explained is how I explain to my clients. You can't. Now, if sometimes with family, no is no, right? But in a professional environment, the no has to have some context, and you just gave a great example of how to push back on that because you can't do everything. And I think that if I don't know how it is in Germany, but here we work a 8 hour day, right? On average, it's 8 to 10 hour days. If I'm hired from 8:30 to 5:30 or whatever my time is, my lunch break is my lunch break, and I get off at 5:30 or whatever time that is. And so there has to be some boundaries because there has to be some balance within the context of your own life. So you shouldn't. I think that so many people, when we talk about this new generation, what is it, Generation X, right? And so many people push back on this generation. Um, and I might have the wrong generation, but I think that this younger generation has done an excellent job of setting those boundaries. I mean, millennials like me and the older generation, they'll complain and say, "Oh, well, they just don't want to work." That's not true. They just put boundaries in place. They've done a much better job of saying, look, if this is the time that we work, then this is the time that we work. Versus our generation where we were taught, uh, we had to learn the lessons of, right, that work cannot be your whole life. It looks perfect on paper, but you got to have some balance. Like this generation, they seek, out that balance firsthand. Now, you've already shared that how your business was born, a little bit about your own journey through self doubt and exhaustion. But, was there one specific pivotal moment with all these things that were happening to you that brought you to this point that made you really realize that you had to change your ways? And I think for me, when you talked about having to move in with your parents, I was going to Dr. Christy Taylor was in therapy, could not tell you why, and it was all because of a job, right? And I think after like the fourth or fifth session, I was just like, how did I let myself get here? Because it was just like you said, right? Perfect on paper. What was that like moment where you said, I'm going to help other women, not to keep this from happening to them, you
It
know?
was not this one exact moment, but it started when I still had my dream job, and I can remember it as it was yesterday. I was on the phone with my best and oldest friend, and I had this perfect life with everything
Mhm.
together. And I told her, I don't understand it. My life is so perfect. I've got everything I ever wanted, and I'm still feeling miserable. So what's wrong with me? And I thought it was about me, that I was the problem. And then later on, I got fired and I noticed, oh, I had identified so much with my job that as soon as it got taken away, nothing else was left. And then there was a rebuilding phase where this is one example I really love to share because it's it expresses so well what was going on at that time in my life. Somebody was asking me, "What's your favorite flower?" And I was thinking, "Oh, my mom, she always said sunflowers because they are so yellow, they are so joyful." So I said sunflowers. And after that, I asked myself, "Is a sunflower truly my favorite flower?" And I didn't know it because I was so busy my whole life to fulfill other people's expectations, to perform on a high level, to be a high achieving woman, to have something to show.
Mhm.
So to prove my worth in so many ways that I completely lost myself. And I think all these acknowledgments and realizations together brought me to a place where I learned that the first step is to get to know yourself intimately and not to chase expectations, because there are so many different ways to build the exact same thing and to do it in the right way, even though the right way might be 100 different ways to do it right.
Mhm.
And it's so important that you're building a life that is aligned with who you are at the core and that fulfills your purpose. So, you also mentioned burnout. I can relate to this too. I had days where it was so, so hard to get out of bed because, we need to be absolutely conscious about the difference of positive and negative stress. And some people say stress is always negative. And we know scientifically that this is not right. There is
Mhm.
positive stress. If we are excited to do something, if it fills us up, if it's aligned, if it's our purpose, it's positive stress. And negative stress is the things we have to do, no matter if we want to or not. And we need to reduce the negative stress. And we can introduce, if we like, positive stress. But that only works if we are in alignment with who we are at our core.
I want to talk a little bit more about this alignment, because you've mentioned burnout, but I want to go back to something that you said. So I'm going to kind of put this all in one question. One of the things that you just mentioned was that sometimes, high achieving women, they lose their identity becomes their job, right? You lose yourself in the work. And you really do a good job of emphasizing the importance of living in alignment with your values. And you shared the story of even like the sunflower, right? Uh, what are your thoughts on just, even though conceptually we as women are trying to do the right thing, when you talk about alignment and living in alignment with your values, do you think that sometimes we can get lost in this ideology of work that we even lose a sense of what are our values, right? So I want you to speak a little bit about that, and how can someone identify their core values, and why is this such a game changer for living your personal, for your own personal and professional fulfillment?
So what I do when I start working with my clients, that the first thing we do is define their 3 to 5 most important values. And you have one set of values. You don't have private values and professional values. You have values that represent you as the whole human being that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many different ways how we can define them. What I like, if it's sometimes tricky to decide between two of them, is as an example, I can have security or I can have freedom. Quite often, security means that I know what is coming. Things are predetermined. I do not have that much choice, but I can plan ahead. If I have more freedom, I have more insecurity, uncertainty, but I can choose whatever is right for me. And if I need to choose between the two extremes, which one would I choose? Would I feel better and more aligned with absolute security and no choice? Or would I choose the freedom and then say, okay, I would love security, but it's not as important as the freedom to choose for me? So that is one thing, how we can approach defining our values. And the next thing is when we have our set of values, then we can use this one as a navigation system. So
Mm-hmm.
I think a trap, and I stepped into this trap too, so I can relate. But one trap we quite often, as high achieving women, step into is that we think if I do the right thing, I get what makes me happy. But the right thing is something different for so many of us, and it changes with the benefits of the one who's defining what's the right thing. It's different if your boss is defining the right thing to do,
Yeah.
or if your partner or your children or your family or your friends are defining what's the right thing to do. So that makes it already a little bit more relative. And, I think instead of doing the right thing, ask yourself, does this decision bring you closer to your personal values, to incorporating them in the life you're designing, or does it take you further away?
Mm. I think some of us, again, to your point, are designing the life around work. Like, are you really sitting down and thinking about what you want? I remember, it's always a conversation I go back to with one of my best friends, and she was in the mirror. She was we were in the mirror. I think we were like 22, 23 years old. And I was like, I want to have this career, and I want to drive a BMW, da 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 da. And she was like, yeah, 'cause she was already married at the time. And she was like, and I want to have 6 children, da da da. And fast forward, here we are now in our 40s, and we look back and we're like, okay, that didn't go the way we thought it was going to go, right? And we would, and did we really map it out? We were just saying some of the things that we wanted, but did we really focus on some of that? Now, you talked a little bit about, and I guess my point is there that we kind of get zoned in sometimes on this one thing that we want on paper, right? But we don't look holistically of what it's going to take to get there. And you talked a little bit about your corporate experience, right? And so I don't feel like I have to zone in on it because we've talked about it several times. And up to this point, people know your story. But now let's just talk about how you've taken that corporate experience and you've become this self-love coach. And so let's talk about, how are you helping? What is your process for helping women transition from overextending themselves to thriving with confidence? Because you're speaking from personal experience as this person who's worked in the corporate space, who had all of this stuff happen to them, and there's so much power in that. Can you share this process? Not everything, right? Because we want people to come to you in paper, but share this process and a success story of maybe of a client who completely transformed through your coaching.
So, one thing that we need to keep in mind is that the corporate world will take as much of you as it can get. So, the corporate world will never say, oh, you're already working so hard, so I'm not going to give you more to do, right? So it's a very demanding environment, and we need to balance things. We need to self-care, and we need to, yeah, just keep a balance and not only focus on the work. Because if we do, we definitely gonna lose the rest of us. And I see it as a cycle. My private life is filling my professional life and the other way around. So it's not that we only need work in our life. Work is important, but we also need all the other things to be happy, fulfilled, excited, stay healthy in the long run, right? So I can tell you one of my first own experiences when I started to draw boundaries in my professional life. For the first time ever, I said no to colleagues. No. And I was sitting on my desk at like waiting for it that every moment the door gets open, somebody's storming into my office like, "You're not doing a good job. Who do you think you are?" I was waiting for something to happen. And you know what? Nothing happened. Nothing. Nothing. And I thought, okay, that went pretty well, right? So I guess my tiny little no was absolutely okay. So I was more expecting to handle everything than other people around me. And that was an awakening, a realization that really influenced the rest of my life. And that's something my clients experience too. The first time you're setting a boundary feels massively, massively uncomfortable because you're waiting for somebody getting mad at you, for something not working out, for somebody pointing the finger at you like, yeah. But it's like with everything we do in life, it's a practice. So the more we practice it, the easier it becomes and the more comfortable it feels until it is. And that I can promise, even if you can't imagine it right now, but until it becomes second nature. Nowadays, I set boundaries easily and transparently, kindly, clearly, without a challenge. And if I can learn it, so can everybody else. Because one thing I can tell you, I have been a prime example of a people pleaser. If I can learn to set healthy boundaries, everybody else can too.
While you were talking, I took a look at your site because you have so many awesome resources, courses that people can participate in. You've been featured in multiple, podcasts, even like this, beyond this news magazine. You've been featured on multiple platforms. You have this audio course. It's a 22-day audio course. Hopefully, let me see. And I just was looking at it, just caught my eye really quick, right? But you have these courses that are designed that people can kind of take it a self-paced way, right? Kind of get to know you intimately. So let's just say I'm not ready for coaching right away. Okay. Um, what are some of the examples of some of the resources on your site where they can come and connect with you and kind of get a feel for your style, learn more about what you do? Not and her site, of course, we're going to have it in the description, but I just think that people can come to you and get a plethora of information up front, right?
Yes. So you already mentioned it. It's the course, it's the 22 days enoughness challenge. So if you have noticed that you're overthinking things, that you're thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, that you're declining so many promising endeavors because you're talking yourself out of them, then this course is perfect for you. It's a 22-day challenge, 22 days, because we need 21 days in a row to create a sustainable new habit. So that's why we do it for 22 days. For 22 consecutive days, you get an audio that you can listen to right away every single day. The audio is less than 5 minutes. And in this audio, you get mindsets, shifts, and mini transformation that add up over the 22 days. And it comes with a reflection prompt for every single day. So you can journal about it if you like, if you're a pen and paper girl, or you can also contemplate about the daily prompt. And it's so time efficient that you can do it while you're driving to work during your commute. So there is no excuse at all to not easily go through the 22 days in a row, and then building your self confidence and getting your mind and your belief on the same plate, on the same page with yourself, so that you become your biggest cheerleader. This course is it's insanely low in price. It's
$47.
$47 currently. So that's if you're not ready to dive into coaching right away, that's an amazing start. If you think, oh, I just got to know Nadia today, so I'm not ready to invest at all, that's cool too. Then you might check out my overwhelm cure. This is if you think there's so many things to do and your to-do list is ruling your life and the day could have 48 hours and instead of 22, because at the end of the day there is no time left but still a lot of to-dos that are unchecked on your list, and you feel overwhelmed, you just want a little bit of peace for yourself, a little bit of me time eventually, finally at the end of the day, then the overwhelm cure is perfect for you. It's an audio too. So again, easily to listen to it during the commute or whatever. It's less than 15 minutes, and I'm giving you 3 shifts that immediately help you focus on yourself and the time you need for yourself. And it's not about a new tool for proficiency and efficiency, because you already have a lot of these. This is the magic thing in between everything that was missing. So then check this one out.
So you have the courses, you're doing the coaching, but you also do some corporate speaking. You're doing corporate events. So if you're contacted from someone who wants you to speak at a corporate level, what are some of the topics that you're talking about now?
Um, I have a lot of topics. One of my favorite topics, and that comes from my days at corporate leadership roles, is the power of feedback. Because, that plays very well into boundaries, self love, and self care too. Because there's a huge, huge difference between criticism and feedback.
Yeah.
Feedback, we use this to feed back to you, so to nourish you, to help you grow. And little hint, we can use feedback to ourselves. So
Yeah.
have an intimate conversation with ourselves to help us grow and transform instead of having the critics talk of tearing us down. That's a topic that's really close and dear to my heart. Um, what's also super important, I love to talk about the importance of balance. I always say it's all about balance. And I know that corporations, they need to look at finances and return on investment, but there's more to it than just numbers. Balance is important, self care is important, and creating an environment where your employees can thrive on many, many levels. Not only oh, we are offering you great food or you have your peace in your break, but much more than that. You can develop, you can grow, you can learn together, you can create a tour of mastery. So, how can we both, I as a corporate and you as the employee, how can we travel a part of the route together so that we both benefit of it? That's also super important, and there's so much juicy topics and exciting ahas in it. Yeah.
From courses to coaching to speaking in the corporate environment, I have to ask you this. It can be challenging to go into business, and you speak a lot about burnout. You speak a lot about having that self love. But I just want to know, when it comes to all these awesome things that you are doing, and you're scaling your business, scaling your impact, because you are a change maker. How are you personally right now maintaining balance with how you're scaling your business and yourself?
So the first thing is that I'm listening to my body. I don't push through when I'm tired or exhausted anymore. Then I take a break. It might be that I sleep for 15 to 20 minutes, because something I notice is when we push harder and push through, quite often we are not really efficient. So we are wasting time, we are wasting energy, we are wasting motivation, which is the worst of all. Another thing I do, I go for a walk, because I notice that nature grounds me, nature refuels me. I love to connect to nature and God outside. That really gives me a lot of power to then come back refreshed. So I'm listening to my body, I'm listening to my needs, I'm keeping the balance as much as I can. And the next thing is I get people on board who are expert in different topics to support me and help me, because it's true, we can figure out everything on our own. We can, everything is available on the internet if you have the time and the patience to do the research and to learn how to apply it. But if you have an expert walking side by side with you, you're so much faster, so much more motivated, so much more efficient in achieving the goals that you want to realize. So that's something I definitely learned along the way. Get the help you need.
I have so enjoyed interviewing you. And I enjoy, we're closing out Women's History Month. We're about halfway through it. And you just are a powerful example of someone who has gone through transition, who has picked up the pieces and continued to move and champion for it. So I've been saying with each of these interviews, whether it airs today, tomorrow, a year from now, or 10 years from now, somebody's coming back to watch this. These are classic moments because the advice is timeless. Now, um, if there's one message that you want every high achieving woman to walk away with from this interview, what would it be?
It is, if something feels off, it is. So trust yourself, trust your intuition, trust your gut feeling, and be courageous enough to dive deeper and follow it.
I have so enjoyed this. Nadja, we're going to have all of your contact information and anything that you have, that you share with us is going to be in the description box for this podcast and interview episode. But where can people find you? And do you have anything coming up within the next few months that you want people to really pay attention to?
So you can visit me in my digital home under nadjahagen.com, and there you will find all the information, everything, the free resources, the courses, the coaching, everything. If yeah, I have something that might be of interest. I'm having my self-love sessions podcast where I share tips and tricks and very applicable strategies to set healthy boundaries and to define your values and to intentionally create an authentic and aligned life. So if you love listening to podcasts, then for the self-love sessions podcast, I'd love to meet you there.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to interview with you today. And again, we're going to feature all of Nadja's information in the description box, wherever you might find this. And thank you for being a powerful change maker and leader that you are, Nadja. It's been a pleasure. And for those of you who are tuning in, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check us out on Work Global News, WORXK. globalnews.com, or you can type in work, WORK, Global News. So you got two ways to get to us. And be sure to check out our YouTube as well as our Instagram and Facebook pages. Thanks for tuning in today and keep being a positive change. Have a great day.